Clubhouse.
Welcome back to a galaxy far, far away. This is the Uncivilized Podcast. This is your host, Paul, joined once again with his friend, Mark.
Just go with it, Paul. Yeah.
Yep, we will just power through.
Power through, Paul.
We're here to talk about the 4th episode of the first season of Andor. This one is called Aldhani. A lot of people thought that this was a boring episode. What did you think, Mark?
What? That's crazy. I was soaking up all the world building. That's why me and you were both had this texting going, yeah, man, so much world building. It's like, because you saw that 3-episode arc ended. Yeah. And we were talking about they hired, 4 directors to do 3 episodes each. And this was like a brand new show now.
Felt the same in terms of the world. But yeah, the pace, what we were trying to do, it did feel a lot different now that you mention it.
Like you said, it really did connect well to the first 3 episodes, and it's continuing the story, but it was like we got this total new plot. We got to go to Coruscant. Yes, so cool.
I asked you last episode, would we meet Mon Mothma? When would we meet Mon Mothma? And you said episode 4. Well, we go to Coruscant for a couple of tasks, and one of them was to meet Mon Mothma.
Ah, it was so cool. She was freaked out. She was scared. She's so stoic and kind of bad A. I just loved that. All the spies everywhere, and oh man, yeah, I liked this episode. I really liked this Luthen character. I love how he was acting on the ship.
Oh yeah,
when he was trying to practice when he put his wig on. He's like, and he's throwing his arms around. That was so funny. And as soon as he stopped practicing, he's back to resting B-face, if you will.
He is a hard ass, really, and he has to pretend to be this other guy. As much as I could tell, he's probably a dealer of antiquities. He doesn't run a museum or an art gallery. They look like they are various artifacts that he has for sale. Did you notice that he had a partial suit of Mandalorian armor in there?
I did. I didn't do much Googling and looking at what other people were talking about, but I did see people were plucking out all the various artifacts that could tie back to, or people were speculating what they were. Yeah, it was very cool. Good way to work in some lore. And I guess that was his cover story.
That is, and that does give you some background about how he might be able to afford what he affords, like his ship. I don't know what ship it is. I am pretty sure it's a Corellian make, the same shipyard that makes the Millennium Falcon and other Corellian ships. They have that kind of that clamshell sort of top and bottom with the gribbly bits in between, and that sort of tapered dome cockpit that the Millennium Falcon has set off on one side. This has more centered, but the interior looked the same except clean.
I was confused because he punched it into jump space, to use Boba Fett terminology, and it seems like Andor was whoa, how is this ship powered? How did you do that? Then he had kyber crystals, and I was wondering is there some sort of secret way to go to hyperspace with kyber crystals that the rebels had that gave them an advantage or something like that? Or did you get any of that?
No, I did not.
What's powering this?
I had to watch it twice to prepare for this podcast, and for that section, when Andor asked Luthen about what powers this ship after jumping to light speed, I couldn't tell what he meant. Maybe it's either the outside swirling part that's maybe that looks differently depending on how you get to light speed.
Yeah, I assume there's some technology that Andor had never seen that he had.
Star Wars doesn't usually get too hung up on that aspect of the universe. It's like ships go to light speed. That's about as much as they ever give us about that. But it is a question mark because they bothered to put it into the script. So that's a good call. With the kyber crystal, I had 2 question marks on that. Is it meant to tell us something about Luthen's own history? That would be some meaningful relic of his past, because, he's an antiquities dealer. So he comes across old things, but this is his thing that he wants back, that he holds dear.
Take this.
What is it?
It's a down payment. It's a quasi-signet. Blue Kyber, Skystone, the ancient world. Celebrates the uprising against the Rakatan invaders.
So is it something gained over his adventures, or maybe also, since it's a kyber crystal, and kyber crystals are what makes lightsabers work, Is it an indicator as to his religious leanings?
That, or maybe he knows a Jedi. You know, maybe he's got some connection. Maybe he's got a wife or something that was, you know, maybe there's some connection there they could tease us with. Because I know, you know, this show's, we don't plan on seeing any of that in this show.
Yeah.
But maybe they'll give us something like that. Because, yeah, you're right. I didn't really think of that. That maybe it could be connected to, what is it, the wills, the
Yes.
kind of religion, if you will, or
Right.
or his a connection to a Jedi.
Well, one of the things that Rogue One brought us that we hadn't seen elsewhere, except for Tarkin using the term religion in A New Hope, talking about Jedi. But in that context, we took it to understand Jedi were Jedi, and that was it. But what Rogue One showed us were that there were people with, you know, normal midichlorian counts that also sort of adhered to a Jedi or Force worshipping religion. I think, what do they call them? The protectors of the wills, or
Right.
something to that
Yeah,
effect.
and I think George had that concept, and I think he wanted to do something like that in the sequel trilogy, where it would have been like these, I don't know, symbiotic single-celled organisms that, you know, the midichlorians, if you will.
Yeah.
Maybe you go into some sort of CGI animated Pixar world where these things are swimming around. I don't know what that would have been, but I was always curious what George would have done with that. But
Me too.
yeah, it's pretty cool.
Because he only ever described it publicly with a couple of sentences that made it sound wildly different than anything we'd seen before. Perhaps a relic of that idea in the sequels is Lor Santeca, the guy played by Max von Sydow, who gets killed quickly in The Force Awakens. He is kind of the modern take on the Force religions type.
Right.
That's expanded upon in the novels. He is a follower of that religion to whatever extent you can be without being able to wield the Force.
Yeah, it seems like he was kind of friends of the family, if you will.
Yes, right, exactly. And so perhaps Luthen is in that fold. I don't know. I don't have any proof of that. I'm just, you know, kyber crystals have a certain association, but they may have a whole other meaning for him.
This is a long shot, but it'd be really cool because Order 66 was about 14 years before 5 BBY.
Sounds right.
Sounds about right. It's like 19 years total. So maybe, you know, Order 66 happened and he cared. And that's what his motivation to fight the Empire came out of that, because he's clearly super motivated. I liked another thing I liked about his character is how we got to see, because, you know, the episode 3, it's like, okay, he's a recruiter. He's trying to recruit Andor. But then to see him essentially selling him kind of like he sells his wares.
But tell them it was always a part of the plan.
Are you giving me a choice here?
Yeah. You take him or call it off. I was planning to shut you down. Your odds have improved since we set the meeting. You'll take him in and lie about how it's come to pass. You plug him in as a replacement for anyone who goes down along the way. In the next 3 days, if for any reason... Look at me! You wanted to lead. This is what he comes to.
He's trying to sell Andor to stick him in this squad for this mission, desperately trying to get this mission to go through, because he was manipulating him. These good guys are not, like, they're a little rough around the edges, which I like. It's really interesting. They're like desperate. They know that what they're doing can easily get them killed any second.
When you say rough around the edges, these guys, like Vel, the leader of that cell, mentions they've been kind of eking out an existence, eating, sounds like worms and grubs or whatever else they could come across as they try to lay low, keeping an eye on the garrison, getting an idea of their patterns, establishing a relationship with that Lieutenant Gorn, et cetera, et cetera. And this is all for money. You know, even though Luthen makes a decent living for himself and can afford a nice ship, that doesn't mean he can finance the whole Rebel Alliance.
I need to start planning if you're no longer coming through for us.
The money's there. It's just getting very dangerous to move it around. I can't pool funds the way I used to.
And similarly, Mon Mothma says the same thing. They have to knock off this payroll, Old West style, and I'm sure that's to finance ships and guys and guns and whatever else you need to overthrow the Empire. It's exciting stuff, and I don't know why people thought it was boring exactly, because this is how TV works. Not every episode is lightsabers and gunfights. Sometimes you gotta establish, like in this one, lots of new characters.
I was thoroughly entertained. I guess if you don't have the patience for that and you just want blaster fights, then you wouldn't like this episode very much. But yeah, back to Mon Mothma. She needs like Star Wars equivalent of Bitcoin or something like that to help the rebels. But
Right, some sort of non-centralized currency system.
Yeah, they need some way, but then they're going after the payroll, the quarterly payroll. I thought that was cool. It's smart. It's good writing because everyone's like, you say payroll, everyone knows what that means, even though, the way it works in the Star Wars universe is probably different, but that's good writing. But what did you think when Mon Mothma brought up this idea of bringing someone into the circle? Who the heck is she talking about? Do you have any idea?
Oh, man, that question is on my list to bring up with you because...
Oh, so I preempted you. I couldn't wait any longer, Paul.
Yeah, well, it's a great question because the circle is not that big. It's hard to know if that cutscene that we mentioned from Revenge of the Sith counts as canon because, a lot of us have seen it, but it didn't make it into the movie.
Right.
So is she possibly talking about Bail Organa at this point? I don't think so. Because
that was my first thought, too.
Me, too. But then I was thinking, well, Kenobi took place 5 years before this point. I think he's active at that point.
And that's right, because he was in the cutscene with Padme and Mon Mothma. Was there anybody else there? I haven't watched that in a while.
I think George Lucas's daughters were in that scene.
Yeah, that'd be crazy. What if they brought back one of George's daughters in there? We'd be like, oh, yeah.
It is crazy. I've recently been kind of fooling around on Instagram, and I saw that Jet Lucas has an account, and he is a visual effects artist on The Mandalorian. But anyhow, if it's not Bail Organa, then maybe, and this is just a flyer, maybe it's Leia, but Leia would only be like 15 at this point.
Oh, yeah, probably not. This is big boy stuff,
right? It's a little far-fetched because I mean she's very accomplished when we meet her at 20, but she's still only freaking 20.
Yeah, and if Bail Organa is already in the circle, that wouldn't really make sense because they might task her with some stuff, but he would be their representative. Yeah.
Could it be Radix? The guy that led the attack on Scarif in
that's a good guess.
Rogue One. I mean, he's naval officer, obviously, capable of commanding a small armada of ships. He can't time an exit too well, but aside from that, he seems pretty capable.
Yeah, they set it up like he was going to have some sort of future role for sure. But then there's also, what about Voss? What is it, Quinlan?
Quinlan Voss?
Quinlan Voss. I had it backwards. OCD, or what's the dyslexia? Yeah, okay. That would be kind of cool. But again, I guess we're not really expecting... That would throw the show off, I think, if they did that.
His name is probably going to keep getting tossed around in the shadows like it was in Kenobi. I wouldn't at all be surprised if it came up here, but
well, the fact that they used his name in Kenobi makes me think they have a plan for. They have, he's going to pop up somewhere.
I sure hope so, because he's kind of a wild card that is all for the Jedi plan, but he doesn't really want to follow the Jedi rules. As far as I understand it. So that makes him kind of interesting as a potential anti-hero type character, which has been, successful with Mandalorian and things like that. So Quinlan Voss, maybe. Leia, probably not. Radix, perhaps. I think it's going to be someone that we've met because it just feels like that's the right way to go for this show, is to bring in someone that we've already met. Like how her husband... Mon Mothma's husband brings up Sly Moore during the planning for the dinner. That's an existing character from Revenge of the Sith. You've seen Sly, and I bet when you see that person, you try to figure out, like, is that like a really awesome conversationalist to invite over for dinner? That person?
Yeah, that's what I was about to say too. The dinner party guest list is interesting.
Vars, Danger, Sly Moore from the Vizier's private chamber.
Is that a problem?
You can't be serious. These people hate me. They spend every day trying to undo anything I've touched.
Well, perhaps tomorrow they'll think twice.
Talking about that husband, I think his name was Perrin, I think is what it said in the credits. That guy has left me with some question marks in terms of his ability to stick on the program here, because I don't think he knows that she's the boss of the rebellion.
Okay. You don't think so? Do you think he just thinks she's some normal senator that doesn't like some of the actions of the Empire?
Yeah, I do. I think that's right.
Man, well, he might end up 6 feet under or something like that.
Or something, because, I mean, he's inviting over really uncomfortable people to have over, because she's clearly not happy about the guest list. It's like, what are you going to do?
I could see him like doing one of those like last minute bro moves and taking a shot for her and getting taken out.
Right. I don't get the sense that he's necessarily a bad guy. Like the fact that he was wearing like that little like robe over other robes made it
little D-bag vibe, if you will.
Yeah, sort of. Like he enjoys the comforts of home while his wife is off earning the senator's pay. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I mean, I probably might be that guy too, but I don't know that I'd be dictating the guest list with weird emperor toadies were I to be that guy. So I got my eye on him. I've got my eye on several characters that were introduced this episode in terms of true allegiances. Mm-hmm. One such is the new ISB lieutenant, Daedra. Her last name they never mentioned, but it's Miro, the blonde woman who was very interested in recovering the NS9 unit that fell out of Andor's possession last week.
Yes, she's onto a rebel pattern that she thinks represents an organized alliance. So she's onto something. Yeah, but she's getting shot down by the bureaucracy. I think they did a good job of capturing the OG Imperial officer tone that we saw in the OG trilogy.
Major Partagaz is that guy's name.
He was good.
If you are looking at him wondering where I've seen that face before, it wasn't the guy who killed Robb Stark at the Red Wedding. This guy is from Game of Thrones, though.
Oh, really?
Yeah, okay. Yeah. He played Qyburn.
Really?
The guy that brought the mountain back to life.
He was a Meister.
Yes, but he was the one that didn't have his chain, so he was sort of like illegitimate.
He got himself killed, didn't he? If I remember correctly. Yeah, okay.
I'm pretty sure a lot of the...
You don't make it out alive in that one.
Yeah, the Lannister hanger-ons at the end there didn't make it out alive.
Yeah, he was a micromanager on top of everybody, man. He was calling them out.
Where would you target these new resources, Supervisor Grandy?
Increased surveillance, sir.
Looking for what?
Anti-imperial activity, as always.
Are you being intentionally vague?
No, sir.
I'll expect specifics by the end of the day.
He threw out the healthcare analogy. We identified disorder and kill it, basically, you know.
We are healthcare providers. We treat sickness. We identify symptoms. We locate germs, whether they arise from within or have come from the outside. The longer we wait to identify a disorder, the harder it is to treat the disease. Do you understand my meaning, Legret?
What was interesting about him was he wasn't necessarily evil. He was like short, demanding, demeaning, but like where Tarkin had like this, I'm pretty sure this guy knows that he's evil. You know, he like snickers when he brushes his teeth at night about all the evil he's caused that day. Major Partagaz on the other side just seemed like the way that he did end that meeting with a bit of like positive reinforcement for her made it like, well, this guy's actually maybe just a manager.
He's like a middle manager, yeah.
Right, that works for the Empire. And, you know, he's a dick, sure, but he's not necessarily evil.
Yeah, I like how George would talk about, he would very intentionally set up the dark side in the Empire to be very machine-like and cold. And you see that reflected in the colors, the sense of efficiency and order. Like they're swinging very far on the order scale versus chaos. And it's that same kind of 20th century authoritarian spirit where countries like Germany did crazy stuff, all, you know, in the name of establishing what they saw as order, world order. That's the Empire right there. So we're seeing George's vision repeat and be honored.
Well, and the ISB itself has not, as far as I know, been fleshed out in the Disney era. Maybe in the comics, but not in the movies and not in the TV shows yet until now. But it had existed in the Legends books, even though it was not covered just like explicitly. It was often described as sort of this boogeyman organization responsible for all kinds of cruel acts, and you didn't want to cross them during the heyday of the Empire because they could find out anything they wanted from anyone. And, you know, just a scary sounding organization, very KGB like.
Gestapo type.
Yeah, right. Now we get to see them.
Did you notice the report of the spending building, presumably the archive on Scarif?
I did catch that at the very end. I enjoyed that. I was double checking to make sure they weren't talking about the Death Star. They're not. They are talking about I'm pretty sure they are talking about the archive and that facility scene at the end of Rogue One. Interesting that they would build it and then blow it up within 5 years.
Yeah, that's cool.
They just burn money in the Empire.
Yeah, and that planet, Aldhani, is like an Amazon distribution planet. They're saying,
Aldhani has the unfortunate quality of being close to nothing and not very far away from everything. It's the perfect hub for distribution.
I was thinking that's kind of like Kingwood.
That's where we're from. Yeah, it's hilarious. The Laughable Forest, shout out. We could talk about Karn. I thought that was funny when he has to go back to Mom, and she was like this Italian mob wife. She's like, get in here. Oh, boy.
That scene just spawned this whole backstory for Karn that I have no written justification for, but it just like the slap and the kind of the abashed look on his face, you all of a sudden get this idea that, or I did, that he is from Coruscant, wanted to join the Empire, was not accepted, or at least did not get the position that he wanted. But he did manage to get on with the Primor Corporation in security, where he tried to become ambitious and shoot his career up. But then he screws up totally.
His failure led to the annex by the Empire of this organization as they slowly take power.
Exactly.
Yeah, that was cool.
And then so he has to go back home, where he probably left in a huff. Like, I'm too good for this place kind of thing. And he hasn't been in touch since he left. Now he's got no place left to go. That was the whole story that just like transplanted into my mind.
Were you pretty sure that was Coruscant? Because they showed him at the spaceport, and I was kind of confused because I thought when they were dressed down, I assumed that was Coruscant because we saw the one sector lead that was in charge of them, dressed them down. And then we saw a spaceport, and I was like, okay, well, I guess he went to another planet or something like that. Or maybe it's just another town on Coruscant, if you will.
I'm almost positive that part of that speech from that officer's name is Blevin. From Blevin was that they were going to be taken from that office that they were getting dressed down to the transport center, where they would be taken away to wherever they need to go, but not there anymore. Since they had already flashed up Coruscant as a named place, and since it looked very Coruscant-y, like back through the windows, you could see super tall buildings. Mm-hmm. And the fact that he needed to take an elevator very far down to where sunlight barely got anymore, then that all added up in my mind to Coruscant. Like, the poorer you are, the further down you live. And that just fit with this, like the story that I concocted in my mind of Karn's background.
They showed that in some of the newer, I think it was Clone Wars. And I know there was a video game that had gotten canceled. Was it called something 33? And it was about those, I don't want to call them like the silos, kind of like we saw in Utapau, where, like you said, the poorest folk on Coruscant would live further down. Yeah. I thought that, that would be cool if they explored that. And since they're spending time on Coruscant, maybe.
Maybe. Because, I mean, if we bothered to see him get the slap from Mom, then I feel like we're still going to follow Cyril Karn, former deputy inspector, to see what it is that he does with his life now that he wields no more power. Does he feel motivated to find this Andor to get his name back with the Empire, or what?
Maybe he'll join the rebels as a spy.
Maybe. He's got a very broad, open face. It doesn't seem like he could successfully lie, but maybe, because he couldn't piece together that speech to motivate the troops. Who knows? Maybe that speech would have made all the difference last episode. If he would have just had a better speech, they would have done a better job capturing Andor. On the journey from Ferrix to Aldhani, there's a short conversation with Luthen and Andor before Luthen gets back into character as Luthen. And they talk about Andor's history as a cook.
I fought in Mimban when I was 16. 2 years of it. Straight out of prison into the mud. I'm one of 50 that survived. And who did it turn out we were fighting? Ourselves. So please.
You were on the ground in Mimban for 6 months. You came in as a cook. You lived because you ran.
Are we to believe that Andor might have actually been in the army and then just went AWOL.
I didn't really catch too much about, what they were trying to say.
They didn't say
there.
a lot because they both knew the story, so they didn't need to say a lot to us about it.
Yeah, and I like how they're being vague. I mean, maybe we'll learn more later, but I thought that was cool how the Empire had them fighting against each other, which is the Palpatine way. But another line that came out of that conversation was where Andor was like trying to figure out who Luthen was, and he's like,
Alliance, Sep, Guerrilla, Partisan Front, one of them.
Isn't it all the same?
It is to me.
Partisan Front is Saw Gerrera's organization.
Oh.
That's obvious. And then obviously the Alliance is the rebels. And then Sep, I was like, was he talking about the separatists? This was past the Clone Wars.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, well, is there still a separatist movement that's going against the Empire? I know they didn't mention, I guess like Crimson Dawn would be like Darth Maul's organization. But yeah, any idea what Sep means?
Anakin killed all the leaders.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean, when there's a power vacuum, other people rise up to try to take what they can. There would still be some amount of war material that's useful that the Empire wouldn't want anyone else to have access to. Just coming in to the whole equation, the CIS, even though they were the bad guys in those movies, all of a sudden would be on the same side as the rebellion, which is the anti-Empire side.
At the end of the day, the Republic turned into the Empire, not the other way around. So it makes sense that some separatists would keep on fighting, I guess. Yeah. So maybe that's what that is.
Yeah, just maybe nobody that made their way onto screen in terms of the movies, but, maybe a very eagle-eyed Clone Wars watcher would be able to identify a likely general or governor or, dignitary of some kind that didn't get caught in the Clone Wars cartoons that we know about, might have wrestled control from whoever was left. So that's a good idea, Sep. I caught it, but I was like, I didn't make the connection, so good call.
Thank you, sir.
But the other one, no. I don't know what the fourth one. No guesses.
Yeah, I didn't know if guerrilla. I didn't know if you said guerrilla, partisan front or guerrilla partisan front. It seems like it would be the same thing. The asymmetric rebels that use more aggressive tactics.
When it comes to Luthen and his stake in that rebellion, I sure hope we find out what it is. Do you think it's maybe tied into that backstory and the crystal, or some other kind of situation? Because he was on Coruscant when everything went down, then, maybe he had position and now he doesn't.
He's ticked off, and he's also like, he's a good leader, you can tell, and he's like desperate to accomplish his goals, and to the point where he's just trying to get the funds, trying to plug people in to make this mission successful. And then I really liked that conversation with Vel, the leader. And he was honest with her. He even said he was paying Andor $200,000, told her pretty much everything. But then she was kind of complaining. He's like, look at me. You wanted to lead. You wanted this gig. Step up. I thought that was awesome.
That was a really like throaty, guttural sounding kind of roar from a guy. Anybody would pay attention to that.
That was awesome. You really saw that intensity, the hatred.
Totally.
That's what he likes about Andor, because he sees that hate and that intensity. When Andor came into the rebel base, that one guy was like, yeah, you can feel that guy's got brass, like he's a tough guy, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had Mouse from the Matrix. It was like, hey, how's it going? Welcome,
Yeah, I don't know if that is Mouse, but that might as well be Mouse.
Yeah, it may as well be Mouse. That's what I thought. I was like, it's Mouse.
Any feelers on those guys in terms of any of them going to survive?
Which ones are NPCs?
Yeah.
I liked the heist scene. There was like an Ocean's 11 like heist planning scene. That was fun.
The charming moment about that was when Mouse, who'd obviously built the model, was like, here, let me take that. The glue's touchy. That's the same sort of shit that I would say if I was not seen, because I would have been the one to have built the model. And then I'd know that Vel was never careful with my models and was constantly breaking them. And so we go over this every night. So I don't have to fix it at this point. So please, just I'll take it.
Yeah, that was hilarious. It did kind of feel like a Clone Wars setup, like when they would always be like, okay, we've got this droid base. Okay, what's the game plan? Okay, you're going to go in here, and they would always do those little planning scenes.
Yeah, but they often had like the hologram, and this was
exactly.
not so much.
This was low tech.
Yeah. But I have a sense that at least 3 of those guys are dead.
Yeah,
you know?
for sure. Our model friend.
He's a soft target. Yeah, for being killed. Because he was instantly accepting. So that means he's probably toast.
Yeah, I was kind of trying to follow this astronomical event that's happening. I didn't really fully catch what it was about, but supposedly it would provide him cover, and Andor seemed to buy into that. But yeah, I don't think it's going to go as planned. We always know it'll never go as planned. Do you think that'll happen in the next episode or the third episode, or what would that be? 6? Would it be? Is it going to be 5 or 6?
I think they got to ingress in 5 and then egress in 6. That's my guess.
Look at you. Military expert over here, people.
Yeah, I think they've got to go in, get in trouble, make it look like they're not going to get out, and that's where next episode ends. Were I the show creator, that's how I would set it up.
We'll see. We'll see how by the script they go. But yeah, it's going good. I'm enjoying the show, man.
Yeah, me too. There's a Star Wars guy at work that is concerned that the show is boring, and I commiserated with him to see what he was getting at. And like I said at the beginning of this podcast, maybe I'm just too overwhelmed by the amount of Star Wars stuff that they're making for me to see and absorb. And they're not just running at this garrison. These people have been set up for a long time. It's not just throwing together a battle plan, which often is exactly how we see Star Wars battles work out. It is taking a more gradual, practiced, professional even approach. And that is resulting in something that feels more, like we said, either in the last podcast or earlier in this podcast, just a more adult feeling show.
Yeah, and I think we saw that like with Rogue One. I mean, the rebels are so outnumbered. They have to pick their battles very carefully. And that's why they didn't want to go into Scarif until the rogue ship brought them into it. It makes sense that they would plan like this and go for a big win.
Do you have any sense of anybody that we've seen so far that might turn into a turncoat for us?
Yeah, I don't know. I know, like I said, they're going to put Karn into play somehow. I hope so, because I thought he might be the arch nemesis guy.
The way that Lieutenant Miro keyed in on the pattern of stuff being stolen from her made me wonder if she's noticing that stuff for the Empire, or if she's noticing that stuff because she wants to make it so the Empire doesn't notice it. But she brought it up, and once I watched it on my second pass, I realized, well, she brought it up to her boss, which wouldn't be a great way to keep that covered up if she was trying to help the Alliance in any way. But I still have my eye on her. I don't know if it's just because she's nice and blonde looking. I don't know. But that's my long shot for possible turncoat at this point.
Yeah, I don't think so, because I agree. I took that as she's ambitious and lots of boys in that room. You know, she had some conflict with that other guy, and she's trying to climb the ladder. It's harder for her, you know, in that environment. I think she's a true believer, and she wants to win points. But she did seem to have something going on with her. I see what you're saying.
I have one last question from me, and then you can have whatever remaining questions you have for me. But part of Vel's talk with her guys and with Andor, she mentioned that there's an Imperial engineer from Coruscant coming through. Is there any possibility that that's Galen Erso?
Is an Imperial engineer arriving from Coruscant.
Oh, wow. That's a really good call, Paul. Look at you. I like that. I sat there and thought about that. I was like, I have no idea what they're talking about. But that would be the obvious choice that we know out there in the world. We don't really know many Imperial engineers otherwise, I don't think.
Well, not that have made it on screen. I mean, in the books that were Legends books, there were other people involved, obviously, than just one genius. And I haven't heard if Mads Mikkelsen is supposed to come back. That would be so cool. Right, because we do know that he probably at this point is being shuttled around here and there and everywhere without much self-direction. The beginning of Rogue One, when he is taken from his home and Jyn Erso has to hide in that hole, she's like 10, give or take. Mm-hmm. And so this would be sometime after that when he is in their custody, but before Rogue One. So yeah, it would work.
Yeah, I was wondering if they might slip in a cameo with Tarkin or even Thrawn or something like that. Is he cast in Ahsoka, I think?
I've heard rumors that we're to see Thrawn at some point in live action, but I do not know when.
I could see them slipping in a few cameos like that.
You know, there's Thrawn books that are in both Legends and canon covering Thrawn's rise. And he's always been a super popular character. He's been in the Rebels, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to see this guy, but I don't know if this is the right show for Thrawn. Tough to say. But we'll put a pin in Thrawn. So if he comes up, we'll be able to say, Mark called it.
Yes. Give me credit.
Did you have any remaining questions for me?
Man, I'm good. I think we covered it all. Yeah, we'll just see if this battle takes place and where they go from here. Maybe is Andor going to buy all in, or is he just in it for the money? Is he going to try to take off and get sucked back in at another time? You know, who knows?
You know, a lot of money has been promised to him, and it sounds like Luthen has every intention of paying him. Which, you know, there's always that doubt that that's a pretty hefty sum for a mercenary. I think 200 whatever. 200,000.
It could be connected to this financial issue that Mon Mothma's having, and Luthen's like, "Sorry, bro, I can't pay you," and he's like, "Well, I guess I'm going to stick around until you pay me."
That could be, or maybe fighting alongside Vel and her team and understanding what they're willing to sacrifice for this cause will make it bigger than money for him. As long as he can eat and have a place to live, he'll be okay. I don't know. That's what the show is for, right?
Intriguing.
Well, until next week then, this has been Paul with Pod Clubhouse. Mark, if people wanted to find you out on the internet, where would they do that?
Jiggy Nut.
And if you wanted to find me, I'm at Pod Clubhouse or at Paul V. Daley on Twitter. We'll come back next week and we'll talk about what will probably be the attack of the Imperial garrison on Aldhani. So we'll see you then. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for listening. This has been an original Pod Clubhouse production. Pod Clubhouse is a podcast network dedicated to encouraging collaboration among podcasters and friends to bring a fresh voice and diverse perspective on a wide array of content. Please visit and leave a comment for us at podclubhouse.com. Rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast feeds on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can find us at Pod Clubhouse. Our DMs are always open, and we'd love to hear from you.
Pod Clubhouse.